Hey, what's happening, y'all? Welcome back to the Media Goose channel. It is I, the Media Goose, your friend Ryan, and the goose is loose, baby. Her! I'm coming at you today with part 3 of my What Theater Means to Me series. Now, it's time to talk about my time in college. I am so grateful for my theater experience in college. I decided when I was a senior in high school I wanted to get pretty far away from home, and I ended up going to Stockton University, which when I got into it was called the Richard Stockton College of New Jersey, but then the era of removing names and statues came about, so they updated the name. Makes sense. But when I got there, the first auditions of the year were like the first weekend of the semester. So there was no like ramp up. It was just diving right into an audition. And I ended up getting called back. I remember at the callbacks, somebody looked at the board and was like, "Who the hell is Ryan Gorman?" And I was like, "That's me." It's like my second week at school. I got there a little earlier just because freshman orientation started sooner, but I ended up getting cast in the show Tartuffe by Moliere. They did that show and another one I think called Private Eyes. And Tartuffe is obviously classical. I played the role of Cleant. He's kind of like Polonius from Hamlet, like very long-winded and written to be like a miser, kind of annoying and eye roll inducing. And that show was so interesting. The lead, so the show is called Tartuffe, and the lead is not technically the character Tartuffe. I mean, it kind of is, but the character Orgon is really like the lead, the person being manipulated by Tartuffe. And the guy playing that role, I didn't know was like a faculty member. He was, I think, like early 30s at the time he was playing it, and I didn't know he wasn't a student. So I'm doing scenes opposite of this guy, and I'm like, holy shit, if this is acting, I'm screwed. Because it was my friend Justin, and Justin was. I always told him this. He was one of the best actors I ever worked with, I thought. And then the person playing Tartuffe in that show, my friend Tyler as well. Tyler and Justin are two of the best actors I'd ever go on to work with. And it was my first show in college, and it's those two. And there was just so many great performances in the show. And I had a lot of upperclassmen I really looked up to in the show. And I'm like a sponge in most scenarios. Like, you put me in a room with artists, and I'm gonna suck up a little bit of everything from everybody if I can. I feel like building out your own process can only be enriched by the perspective of others, the experience of others. And I mean, Sarah and Courtney were both amazing in that show as well. The funny thing about that one, the first rehearsal, so we get there and the director goes, "All right, so I do all of my script cuts on day one so that actors don't think it's something personal or that I'm upset with their performance." And I mentioned how the character I was playing was long-winded. The director cut like maybe half of my lines on that first day, just cutting entire monologues where he was like, yeah, he says nothing for all of that. So that was kind of, I don't know, it made me feel a certain way at the time, but it also took the pressure off of me. What's wild is there was like this whole thing where one actor was cast, my friend Mikey, but he was playing, I think, William Barfay at the time at a different theater, like a community theater. And they ended up having to recast the role because they realized he had too many conflicts. And apparently, the director, Gene, actually considered giving me the role based on the audition, but the decision was made like, this is a first semester freshman and it's a metric shit ton of dialogue. So let's, they went with Justin, and I'm grateful they did because I would not have been ready for that role. And I learned so much just sitting at the learning tree of Justin and Tyler in that show. I I flock towards talent. Like, I, not even just talent, but work ethic, professionalism. All of those things really matter to me in my processes. So when I see other people exemplifying them, I try to learn from them. I try to, I don't know, just have an open ear. And the second semester of my freshman year then was the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. That, the audition and the callbacks were super competitive. The department that at my college was never larger than, like, I don't know, 20 to 35 people. Like, it was a pretty small program, but there was a lot of talent. I felt like almost every callback I ever went to at Stockton was like there was multiple people going for roles. It wasn't ever like, it never felt easy, at least in my first couple of years when I was an underclassman. And I remember for callbacks, I was called back for William Barfay, a role I still really want to play one day. I think I would have so much fun as Barfay. Magic foot. Oh, I would just kill it. Um, but that ended up going to an upperclassman, which was fine. He was definitely a better singer than me, and I can't even argue with that. And that's important for that role. I think I can absolutely sing it now, but back then I think I wasn't trained enough to actually be as clean of a performance as I would be able to give now. But I ended up getting Vice Principal Panch. And Vice Principal Panch is such an important role. He's the most lines of dialogue, but he's in no songs. And that is often a place I find myself in the way that I'm cast. But in that show, he's the word moderator at the spelling bee. So I really push the pace of the show. Panch pushes the pace of the show. And I just thought that it was a really different challenge for me because I had never done deadpan at that point. Vice Principal Panch is very flat, controlled. He has moments of explosion, but you have to be really controlled to make those moments pop more. So it was a really exciting challenge for me. And my friend Tyler, I mentioned from the Tartuffe show, I thought was more suited to the role, honestly, and I still kind of feel that way. But I think I might have benefited from like a let's get some fresh faces in here initiative. And that's not a bad thing because I killed it as Vice Principal Panch. The show ended up getting selected to go to ACTF. If you don't know what ACTF is, the American College Theater Festival, all around America, there are 13 regions, and within those regions are like hundreds of schools. And for a week, usually in the winter, theaters from hundreds of schools go to your region at like, we did ours at Westchester University, a few different colleges. We went to Cleveland one year, but getting to perform a show there was a massive honor. Only like 4 to 6 shows got selected every year, and when there's hundreds of hundreds might be lowballing how many shows are being considered. Because for every school, you're submitting at least one, but I know my school submitted like 4 shows for every cycle. So getting selected to go perform at ACTF, that is in the top 3 most electric performances I've ever been a part of. It was unreal. I remember standing because the opening number, everybody gets out on stage besides Vice Principal Panch and Mitch Mahoney, the comfort counselor. And I remember the energy at the end of the opening number of that performance at ACTF. I think we might have got a standing ovation. And the context of that is it's a theater full of people that want to be there. You know the percentage of theaters that you're normally performing in that are occupied by like obligated family members or like young people in a family, like people not really wanting to be there, so you feel that in the reactions you get. Well, now imagine performing to a sea full of theater kids. And when the opening number ended, and whether it was a standing O or not, the electric response, me and the actor Dave playing Mitch just looked at each other like, holy shit, do you... Like, it was a palpable feeling in the air. And that cast is another one that I when I talk about some shows, I say I put that up against any of the shows I've been in terms of like best show, best quality of talent, people playing roles they're great for. That was such a good show, Spelling Bee. It was it's one of my favorite musicals as well because it doesn't fall into a lot of the traps of like, let's get 20 people on stage doing jazz squares. It's a smaller musical, at least in the way that I think it should be done. I've seen versions where there's like an ensemble added and it's obnoxious and I think misses the point of the show. But that's besides the point. But I loved being in Spelling Bee. And then for the second show, I think that was when there was a show that went to Greece or something. I think it might have been Ajax. And when that was happening, there was another show, No Exit, by Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre? It's an existential masterpiece. And I auditioned, and I ended up getting Garson, Credo. There's a couple different adaptations where the name is either Garson or Credo. And this wasn't like a full department show. It was, I think the circumstance was that there was a student named Mike who had like, his major might have been directing, but there wasn't like a directing course of major yet. So he had to, for his final project, actually direct a show. So he ended up doing No Exit. It's a 3-person show, minimalist set. It's just a table in the middle, really. And it's probably another role I was not ready for. Like, at this point in my career, I think Spelling Bee was a show where I really learned, and Tartuffe, I talked about learning from Justin, Tyler, Sarah, Courtney. This is when I start to become an actor. I'm not just a performer exploding in directions anymore. I'm really acting, and I'm finding myself and my voice as an actor. And No Exit might have still just been a little ahead of me at that time, but I still think I did really well with the like emotional connectivity of it. It was just a matter of the process was kind of bad. I think like until halfway through the process, we thought it was a staged reading. Then suddenly it wasn't a staged reading and it was only a one-off performance. And during the performance, a massive section of the script was skipped to the point where I almost thought I was going to turn to the audience and go, well, sometimes it doesn't work. It was wild. We were doing theater in the round as well. So there's that like closed in anxious feeling. And then one of the performers skipped just a ton of pages, did a monologue from like the final few pages, and me and the other performer were just standing there like, what do we even do now? That was pretty insane. But then going into my sophomore year, the cool thing about going into sophomore year, I said how freshman year, that first weekend was like just you're thrown right in. Well, as a freshman, I know what that next semester show is going to be. I don't need to prepare a monologue over a weekend. I had a whole summer to prepare. And the director was the actor that actually played Barfay, and it was called The Profession by Walter Wykes, and it's theater of the absurd. And if you don't know, theater of the absurd is basically like an episode of Black Mirror. Like it's a universe outside of the rules and regulations of our society. There are things happening that you just have to accept. It kind of takes like a lifted level of suspension of disbelief because it's ridiculous. And that show, the director was very specific about what he wanted for the audition. He even mentioned there was only 3 characters in the show. One was a man, one was a woman, and one was indescript. It could be either. And for the male role, you would have to get down to your underwear. And that didn't scare me away. I wanted to show I was comfortable. So I picked a monologue from another Walter Wykes show, so it would be within theater of the absurd. And it was called The Spotted Man. And it's this guy going to a doctor to tell him about how there are spots appearing on his body. But every time he sees them, they move and shift to different parts of his body. And by the end of the monologue, he's freaking out. He's like screaming, and he rips off his shirt and is like, "You think I'm crazy? Look at me." And I spent the entire summer getting ready for that audition, and I got cast. That might be the most competitive audition I had been in to that moment, because all of the department, all like 20 to 30 people, are coming out for these 3 roles. And it was really intense, and not everybody, how do I say this? Not everybody takes auditions and callbacks positively. Some people go to like a negative place where it's like you're competing with each other. And like, look, I get it, we're competing, but it doesn't have to be aggressive or negative or anything. Some of my favorite parts, I've had to audition against best friends, and it's just like an acknowledgement of, I'm going to do everything I can. I know you're going to do everything you can, and whatever they decide, we'll go with it. But I remember some upperclassmen being a little pissed off that I got the part I got, and that so I got the part that could have been male or female, and the person who got the male lead is the person I started that theater company with that I'm not really associated with anymore. And nobody liked that guy. He was like disconnected from it all. He wasn't somebody that like went around a lot, so he just showed up, and the way other people took it, he just showed up and took parts from people. And we started hanging out a lot and becoming friends then, so those same feelings associated to him became associated to me. And there was one upperclassman who flat out told me the one day, she was like, "Just so you know, hanging out with him, we don't like him, and if you keep hanging out with him, we don't like you either." And this was somebody that, like, anytime people are in the room, they act really nice, and like they do that kind of like, they act like a kid and like sweet, and that was not who they were. They were nasty. But I really respected the director, because he could have cast upperclassmen who he knew more or was more comfortable with, but he allowed me and the other guy to walk in and earn those roles. And I really respected him for that. And frankly, I really respected him as a director. This is the show that took me up to a different level. Like, I treated this the way I thought actors treated working in film. Like, I picked apart my script and just fully immersed myself in the language of the show. And the character I played was the villain. And on the first day of rehearsal, the director was like, "All right, so you have to shave your head bald and you have to learn how to walk on stilts." I was like, holy shit. Okay, like I will shave my head bald because I want this fucking role. And then when it was time to walk on stilts, I almost like broke my ankles. My legs like bowed out. And I don't know who said it, but I heard somebody from the creative team, whether it was the director or the SM, somebody mentioned the idea of recasting me if I couldn't walk on stilts, and that like triggered me. I was like, I am not being recast. Like, go get me a big ass 2x4 from the scene shop and I'll use it as a walking stick and we'll figure this out, but you're not recasting me. And within like an hour, I was walking around the room on the stilts. Something that was really core to me earlier in my career, and I think still is kind of a part of me, but I've tried to get rid of it. I am very competitive. I came up playing sports and stuff, and a lot of my processes mirrored my sports processes, which created a competitive side. So when somebody says something like, we're going to recast you, that means you're going to cut me. That means I'm not good enough. And that just gave me something to chase and to like claw at. And honestly, the director also did a great job of doing that. The director was very good at humbling me, telling me when I was doing too much, when moments didn't work. To the point where sometimes I was a little triggered of like, you didn't have to say it that way, but I never expressed that outwardly just because I think there's more value in taking that in moments and then communicating it later, like, hey, I didn't love that. But I was a sophomore back then, and I was a punching bag in that department. I was like the only guy that it doesn't matter. I just got made fun of a lot. I really don't get why. There was a teacher that also like kind of made fun of me a little bit, and it's kind of hazing, but it's really not. Like I was in an actual frat where there was hazing, so it wasn't that. But even in theater, you know how it is. There's like hierarchy of how people talk to each other. And I just felt so proud by the end of this process with the performance I gave because I needed to be directed, and the director really got the most out of me and helped me. And that director, I think, is one of the better directors I've had. And we didn't really vibe personally, but I fully respected him professionally and treated him as such in the space. And we had to me, like when the final product is great, you had a good relationship. And that's how I always saw that show. So The Profession, in my opinion, was like the first show where I went to a different level as a performer. Like, I'm going to do these lines 100 times, 100 different ways. I'm going to stay up late trying to figure out my character. I'm going to try to make rules in this lawless world. I really committed myself to the process. And I think that getting that part in that ultra competitive setting, having people like angry I got the part, it all just like brought out that dog in me. Like you're not going to prove me wrong. Anytime a director casts me, I aim to make that director look like a genius in casting me and whatever they cast me as, whether it's the smallest role or the biggest role. I want to give the best that I can. I want to be respectful of everybody around me. I want to take in everything I can. So with that director, I took everything I could from that director because we were very different people, and sometimes those are the people you learn the most from. And then the second show, so not only was I the 7-foot tall villain, but then in the second act of the show, I became like basically the mysterious man from Into the Woods. I was dressed as a vagrant. The character's name is the Vagrant. And I run around yelling riddles like moon pie, the eyes, darkness, dream hole. Just insane stuff. So it was like this controlled, over the top, which feels contradictory, but in theater of the absurd, it's kind of all a contradiction. So it's like this absurd disciplinarian, and then this like I look like Charles Manson crawled out of a dumpster. It was so much fun, and I got to explore so much of my range. And the Vagrant, I was like so physical, it was ridiculous. I think that might have been what got me the role, because I was like rolling on the ground, doing barrel rolls, just all over the place. It was so much fun. It's one of my favorite shows I've done. And then the second show of my first semester sophomore year was Hello Herman, a terrible script. There's a movie of it with Norman Reedus, and it's if you watch it, it's the script of the play that we did, and the play is just not good. It's a play about a school. I don't want to say the word because, the way YouTube monetizes things. A school attack, and rather than telling like a character driven story or like picking one thing that led to this school attack, they told every possible story. The dad was abusive, the little sister died and like got hit by a car cartoonishly. um there were so many things. Maybe he was gay. Like anything that could be a stereotype of why that kind of incident happens, they forced into the play. um This show was good for me because I really wanted the lead Herman, the kid that does the awful thing, because I wanted to play like a psychologically broken character, and I didn't get it. I got the like right wing asshole, like Rush Limbaugh radio guy, and it humbled me because I was riding high off spelling bee in the profession. So I was like, I'm going to come in here and get this lead, and I didn't. And I think that was good for me. I also think I would have gotten lost in that character Herman like too far, as I ended up at a later time. But that show, these years are when my closest friends start to come into my life. The friends I still have now in my real life are the people I'm doing these shows with. And it was amazing. Just looking back at that as the good old days, like you doing theater with your best friends, your family. Not having to worry about the 40-hour work week, none of it. It was just bliss. And then the second half of my sophomore year, the first show of the semester was called The Frogs Reimagined. And I think it's the worst show I've ever done. And it also started a theme in my college theater department of producing shows that should not have been produced, where they weren't producing shows for the students anymore who are paying their money every year. They're doing it for the faculty. Oh, this person wrote a script once, and no matter how bad it is, we're going to do it. Oh, this person wants to play Prospero before they retire, so we're doing The Tempest, but the students can't audition for the lead role. We're doing a show that's not casting any students at all. There was just a lot of that at my college that pissed us all off and was kind of horse shit. And this show was written by a dean or something, and it was just bad. It was like, maybe it was funny for the people that wrote it, but it was miserable to perform. Because the frogs, the story of Dionysus, I got the lead, the character of Dionysus, except they had turned it into this, like, instead of Dionysus, this god of, like, merriment and festivities and festival, they turned him into this character, Bonoff. It was like this bastardization of Bono and Bob Geldof. And, like, they didn't tell me what that meant. And I had to do an Irish accent, and like the week of the show, the dialect coach on the fucking show, who was also the head of the theater department, pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, you're too Irish." And I was like, "What?" She was like, "You're too Irish. Bono is like kind of Americanized. He's a man of the world, and like Bob Geldof didn't sound how you sound." I was like, "All right. I'm either a leprechaun or I'm nothing. We open in a week. What do you mean? You haven't coached me on my dialect at all, and you come to me a week before curtain and say your accent sucks?" So then for the entire performance, I was in my head. And I look at it as my worst performance to date for sure. Like, in terms of holding myself accountable, I got so in my head about my accent that I kind of flopped performance wise. I've been told I wasn't that bad, but the way I remember it, I was just, I don't know. I think I was overcome by a process where I couldn't get what I wanted out of it, and I was too young of an actor to know how to communicate that. But it was another lead role under my belt, another lead role that didn't sing. A niche I find myself in over and over, as I mentioned. Then the next show, is that it? Oh, and the big kind of the thing that pissed everybody off the most about the Frogs Reimagined. None of us were going to audition. Most of the students were not auditioning a week before the show, or at least my friends weren't. And then the teachers, the head of the department, started telling everybody, me in particular, pulled me aside after class to tell me this directly. This show is going to Greece, they told us. You'll get to go to Greece and perform and workshop it and all these things. I got my passport and everything. It's the only reason I auditioned. And we didn't go to Greece. They pulled the plug on that. And I had never felt so lied to. It was really upsetting. And it was a crap show. I'm so positive in the way I talk about shows. I'll always give benefit of the doubt, but this one was just throw it away. So that's the end of my sophomore year. That's like half of my college career. Well, I don't go the normal 4 years. So then my junior year, the first semester of my junior year, there was this show called Paris 75. The head of the dance department basically made like every year they would do this thing called the medley series where there was like dances and songs, and this year they decided they were going to actually like write a script for like the connectivity. It wasn't just going to be presentational. The director Henry actually wrote a script and everything. And I played a French cafe owner, so obviously I got to show off my French accent. That one was pretty fun, honestly, Paris 75. I heard people that saw it said it wasn't great, which wasn't surprising because the script itself wasn't great. But Henry was such a character. He was like every dance teacher you can think of, like a tall, older gentleman, bald head, very graceful. We joked like he hovered over the air. He didn't walk on it. He like had mystique and like, I don't know, aura. And everybody was so intimidated by him and afraid of him and like treated him like a god. And I just talked to him and we got along and had a really good working relationship. Because I'm professional and respectful. So when I walk in a room in a rehearsal, I don't waste time. And that became very clear to me. He does not like people that waste time, and I'm not going to waste his time. So when I'd walk on stage completely ready to go, not joking with this person and that person, and we just connected. And I took a dance class with him, I think that same semester, where I got an A in beginning ballet, and I nailed the midterm, and I'm a slept-on dancer, but I'm pretty good. I'm not a tapper. I'll just say that. I've lost a lot of weight. I think I could do better tapping now than I did when I was in Something Rotten. But Paris 75 was pretty fun. I got to be in a show with the dancers, so that was like a fun intermingling of departments. And I got to sing a solo, and that was fun. I didn't get to do that a lot in college, and I had a lot of fun with it. Then I co-directed a show called Broadway in the Box. So The way my college worked, every calendar year, the department did 4 shows, and then there was the student run theater club that did a lot of shows as well. My first few years in college, they did not do like full scope productions. It was things like Broadway in the Box, which is kind of your typical medley of just Broadway songs, but you had to audition with a number and be chosen. And me and a good friend of mine, Mikey, co directed this. And it was a great time. It was one of my first times directing, I think. I think this is my first time directing. And it was just so much fun. I love working with performers and just having like creative freedom. It was a great time. Broadway in the Box was so much fun. Um I got to sing Betrayed my freshman year. I didn't write that down for freshman year, but my freshman year when they did Broadway in the Box, I got to sing Betrayed from the producers. I originally wasn't going to make the cut because I forgot to mention to the director, Ray, that I was going to cut that entire middle dialogue sequence and cut it from like 8 minutes to 3. I wasn't going to make the cut. Then I told him that, and he was like, "Oh, you're in." So that was cool. Maybe the closest I ever come to playing Max Bialystock. Then the second show of the year was A Year with Frog and Toad, and I skipped it. I didn't audition for that because I kind of got like loosely peer pressured into joining a fraternity, and that took priority for me. And it also meant I joined another show. I auditioned for the show Comb and a Prayer Book, and that was a paid opportunity for my college. The Holocaust department at my college, which is like a really well-funded, renowned program, a student was the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor named Elizabeth Blum Goldstein, and that woman survived 6 concentration camps as a teen. And the show did not shy away from the brutality. We went from portraying Nazis to Jewish people to animals to every part of the scope of that experience. It was like 8 actors, and the whole show is set where the grandma and the granddaughter are recollecting over here, and the rest of the cast are acting it out. And it was really intense, and it honestly helped me grow a lot as an actor, because at that point, I was kind of messing with like going method and like, oh, I'm all in on the character. And the director like broke me down one night, and because he could see I was too in character, and like I think he could tell I was in it for the wrong reason. Lane was a great director, and we did this scene or this exercise where you had to pick one line of dialogue, and somebody would say a bunch of different things to you, like you're experiencing this, and all you have is that one line of dialogue, and you have to change your inflection and your attitude and everything. And the things that the director was yelling at us got worse and worse and worse. And I was like the last person that went, and he got more intense with every person, and I was last. And I ran out of the room crying by the end of the exercise. And the director was like, "Do you know why I did that?" And I said, "No." And he was like, he explained to me the whole like, this is not the show to do method. This is a Holocaust show. There's no method to putting yourself in that situation. This is acting. And I haven't done method since then, and I don't really respect or believe in method acting. Whatever you got to do for you, but if your process impedes on somebody else's process or somebody else's comfort, it's a no. And that show, I mean, I got paid, and we went on like a state tour. We went up from New Jersey to Baltimore. We did a few days on the Inner Harbor in like a 5-star hotel while also being paid, and like free dinners and stuff. It was insane. I loved it. And it was a bunch of us again, a bunch of friends getting to jump in a bus and do theater. That it was all of our like least lines ever. All of us had like 5 lines in the whole show because it was all about the niece and the grandma. But It was a bunch of friends and we got tanked. We got real drunk in Baltimore. Oh my God, it was crazy. That whole weekend was some of the most fun I've ever had in theater. And it was also the first time I got paid in theater, so that was awesome. Then, the most important show I ever did in college, I think, and I still have my script right here, The Courtyard of Miracles by Iakovos Campanelis. I kind of scribbled over the translation and everything there. But The Courtyard of Miracles is a Greek classic, and it was written in Greek, and it was translated to English, and my college performed it. And this Iakovos Campanelis is viewed as like Arthur Miller or Tennessee Williams in Greek writing. He talked a lot and wrote a lot about class consciousness, about the disparity between classes, about the plight of the working person, the blue collar person. It's called Courtyard of Miracles because a courtyard is kind of similar to like ghettos where you could cram a bunch of people into one space and everybody in that courtyard is praying for a miracle. And that kind of speaks to the capitalist hellscape we still live in. And this was directed by a woman named Martha Frunzilla, who is the best director I've ever worked with. I'm assuming she's also an incredible actress. I haven't seen her act. I've heard her sing because she's on Spotify and YouTube with like hundreds of thousands of followers. Martha Frunzilla, she's a sensation. She was like just primal energy. Where some people think too much, Martha cut through that. I remember auditioning. I walk in and I really wanted to be a part of this show. I walk in and I do a monologue. And she goes, okay, do the monologue again. Do it like you're a gangster that's about to put me in the river. And I was like, oh shit. Like it almost arousal? I don't know. Like that feeling of being challenged in the thing that you love, and for somebody to communicate to you so concisely and clearly what they want, what they need. Oh my God, I just like smiled like, oh my God, yes, I love that. And I backed up and like took a second and I did it. And I slowly creeped closer and closer until I finished the monologue right in front of her, like whispering. And she's like leaning over the table, pulling me in. And I got the lead in this. The lead. I had the most lines in the show, but Courtyard of Miracles is an ensemble piece. I played the tragic hero, Stelios. This is the show that cemented my transition from a performer to an actor. This is the script I used. I still got everything highlighted. Courtyard of Miracles is a masterpiece of literature. I am so lucky to have gotten that part and gotten to work with Martha. Please Google her, Martha Frunzilla. She is just an incredible woman. I listen to her music on Spotify a lot. It's just vibey Greek music, and her voice is just gorgeous and soothing. I'd give anything to work with Martha again. She found something in me I didn't know was even there as a performer. I need to get to Greece at some point to be with her again, performance-wise. He was an addict, and I'm an addict, and at that point I was an alcoholic living in alcoholism, not the sober life. This was my greatest performance to date, potentially, because of the dramatic depths I went. Even more than I've said before about like committing myself to a process or treating it like a film. This was like my holy Bible. I I take acting. People act like it's not serious. It is so serious to me. I love it more than I can describe. Within these pages is such brilliant representation of humanity. Oh, I love Courtyard of Miracles. That group, we did such incredible work. Nicole Clark, Paul Brodo, Julie, Uncle Chino, my boy Tony, my guy. We we were like oppositional forces in this show. I was the tragic hero. He was the person benefiting from the character's tragedy. You learn the most about the upper limits of your ability and your range when you are surrounded by like minded individuals. I pushed harder every night because I could see Anthony across from me going further. I could see Paul Brodo going further. I could see Nicole pushing it. That kind of stuff. I've done shows where it feels like I'm the only person in the room that gives a shit, and it stinks. But I can still find my way to be excellent in that. But when you're in a room of like minded individuals and working with Martha for that whole process, I learned more about acting from that woman in that process than I learned from my acting coach from in 4 years. I remember Martha telling me that I needed to go to Greece with her and work in the theater with her, and I might need to look into that. That woman saw something in me I didn't even know I had within me, and I wouldn't be on the path I'm on now. I don't think I ever would have seen myself as the serious actor I see myself as now without Courtyard. It gave me confirmation of I'm not just a clown. I am not just a laugh. I am so much more than that. And then fall 15, my senior year, we lead off with. This is not the script I used in the show, but it's one of my favorite plays of all time, so I have to have it. The Real Inspector Hound by Tom Stoppard. Stoppard is the master comedian of ideas in English language, it says on the front. The Real Inspector Hound is a comedy of satire, of high and delightful quality and great fun. The action is fast, continuous, and extremely funny. I agree with that assessment. It's a murder mystery. It's a play within the play. It's a mockery of murder mysteries, and it's a mockery of play within the plays. There's so many referential levels happening there. And once again, this was that friend group I've talked about developing that is now my family. This was all of us. We were all in this. Just a group of best friends doing theater together. And I didn't audition for the Real Inspector Hound because I had moved off campus and needed to get a job. And it was Taco Bell. And I was having a party on the Saturday night of auditions when my friend Mikey, who was the director, and my friend Maddie, who was directing Rocky Horror Picture Show as well, they like take me upstairs into my room and are like, "Hey, so you have to audition." I was like, "No, I can't." And my friend Mikey was like, and at this point, the Real Inspector Hound, we had to work on in our directing class. So I loved this play already. And he's like, "You have to audition. I didn't have enough men come out. I don't have enough people to cast this show. And I thought you were auditioning until like 2 days ago. And now you didn't. And I need you." And when your good friends call you, you listen. You go to them and you help. I remember telling Mikey, I only want to be the inspector. I don't want to be Bird Boot or Moon. I just want to be one of the inspect. I just want to be the inspector. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Just go to callbacks. And I went to callbacks and got Bird Boot, one of the two critics. The critics are basically the leads. It's two critics that go to see a show within the go to see a play, and they get dragged into the play, and their own real life conflict and the conflict of the play interweave, and it is satire, comedy, farce, slapstick. Maybe not slapstick with the English sensibilities, but some of the comedy in the way that we executed it was slapstick. And I joked at the time that this was as close as I'd ever get to playing Max Biala's stock as Bird Boot, because he was like the guy that used the fact that he was a theater critic to sleep with actresses, and he's sleazy like Max. And I talked about how my Irish accent messed me up so bad in The Frogs, but I was too young to like speak up for myself. Well, in this show, the director wanted me to have a Cockney accent, and the other critic was going to have like an elevated British to kind of show the class differential. I could not do a Cockney accent for the life of me. I sounded like the Elephant Man. It was not good. I just couldn't place it in my mouth in the right place. I understand it's in the back of the throat, but it was really hard for me. So I had a meeting. Me, the person playing Moon, and the director all sat down, and I was like, I can't do this accent. And I'm getting a block about it. And I know what happened last time. It messed up my entire performance. So I'm coming to the table right now to say I need help. And we ended up deciding that, yeah, if you can't do the accent, we're not going to do the accent. So what do we do? And we talked about the characters and what it could mean. And we ended up between standard British or New York, and have it where like it's the British critic and the New York critic. But we ended up going with just both critics as kind of standard British, and I was so much more comfortable. I can do a British accent, no problem, but at that time, I just could not do Cockney. I'm pretty comfortable in Cockney now. I have to really be intentional about placing it in the back of the throat. Accent work is very much about where you're speaking from in your mouth, whether it's the front, like in Irish, right under your teeth. The tongue should be hitting the back of your teeth the entire time. And the eyes become eyes. Every accent has those little isms that make it easier to pull you in. And I just didn't have that for Cockney yet. And once the accent was figured out, man, it's the most fun comedy I've ever been in. Like, it was like being in the movie Clue. Like, it's that level of comedy and murder mystery, and it was just the best. And the next semester was The Tempest. And it's my final semester for like a year, because I go away. And my final semester, we were finally doing Shakespeare. I had been on the head of the department's ass for years. Like, hey, can we please do a Shakespeare? I really want to do that for like my knowledge and my well-roundedness as a performer. Instead of all of these damn shows we do where you cast casts of no students or you do shows for professors, can you do something to help the students grow? And we ended up doing The Tempest. And I really wanted to play Caliban, so did one of my best friends. I talked about that earlier. The way that that's okay for me is just, it's not personal between performers. Make it hard for the people making the choice. That's all you can ever do. And so much about an audition is picking the right monologue. So Caliban is a monster, a beast. He's very physical and he's just not human. So I picked a monologue from Lear where Edgar becomes poor Tom the beggar. So like he starts off like, oh, by the lucky wind of the something, I got away from the whisper of a tree. and he's like panicking, and then he slowly realizes he has to disguise his identity to survive. So he starts talking and like caking his face in mud and acting monstrous and disgusting to separate himself from that like clean cut member of the court. So that was my monologue I did for Caliban to show the grotesque, disgusting side. And I got cast as Caliban, and it was just so much fun. One of my good friends, one of my best friends, she's a sister to me, Alana, was Trinculo. And the funny thing is, we hated the guy playing Stefano, and that's kind of accurate to the show. Stefano should be annoying. So we kind of bonded both on stage and off of it through our hatred for that person. But this was my first Shakespearean show, and I love Shakespeare my whole life, so I took it so seriously. And I think I nailed Caliban. I think I could play that role again today, and like, I think I played Caliban so well. It's weird to say that, but you know how like they share videos from like Broadway shows of monologues, and it's like, wow, look at that. That's how good I felt my Caliban was. Like, especially the monologue towards the end where he talks about the island. Be not afeared, the island is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Oh, I just got chills. And I remember the performance of that. I fully lost myself. I never stood completely vertical. I was always crouching and rolling and like just so physical, and I compared my Caliban more to a crab than like a man because I was so low and crouched and physical. That was one of the most rewarding experiences I've been a part of. And I know a lot of my friends in the show did not have as much fun as me because the director kind of only worked with certain actors, and for the rest of the cast was like, figure it out. But I did get that attention from the director, and sometimes I had to shake it out of her, but I got it. That was something hard about my time in college, was the people my age got professors who were like already through their retirement plan. So we didn't always get the most, I don't know, you shouldn't have to feel like you're begging your teachers to teach you. And that's what we had to do at Stockton. And some of my friends talk resentfully of their time and not getting enough, and it's the truth. But for me, I was going to her office after class and asking for notes. I was, before a monologue, I'd go to her and be like, I need you to really pick me apart on this because I made some weird choices. I really like, I don't know, I have found that the energy you put into something, you get it back. So the desperation I put into that to learn from her, she did start to meet me halfway. She did. I just didn't think I should have to beg for it. But overall, I had such a privileged time in theater, especially in college. It was a small department, so I always had opportunities to act. I always got good supporting roles or leading roles. A lot of my time after college was spent like, oh shit, I peaked in college. And then in college, I was thinking I peaked in high school. So maybe you're always thinking you peaked. But I had such a diverse range of opportunities as a performer in college. All of the acting performances I just listed. And there are more. Broadway in the Boxes I didn't mention. There are more. I talked about the theater club shows. Night of Sex was a show we did every year where it was all sexually explicit numbers, but we raised money for like the AIDS Alliance and things like that. So there are always so many performance opportunities, but I also had a ton of non-performance opportunities, like directing. I'm going to talk about directing another time, but I went back after my 4 years because I didn't finish ADHD, alcoholism, undiagnosed ADHD, so I didn't even know why I couldn't think. Um, and the more I realized I couldn't think, the deeper I went into alcoholism, kind of became a spiral. But when I went back to school, I did not act again. I only directed, and that was really great. I directed Just One More Hand, and I directed The Love of the Nightingale. And I'll talk about directing another day because I just reached an hour on the video today. But that's my college time. I also worked in the scene shop for like 3 or 4 years. You had to volunteer for like a year before they would employ you. And I did the year, I put in the time, and then I got hired. And I worked in that shop for years. And when I got back later and I was like an alcoholic, I worked in the shop again and I wasn't as much of a contributor as I had been previously. I loved going into the shop and like just banging out a set, getting a set done, finishing the flooring of a show. Like I was somebody that was trusted to do things in the shop. There were days I was the only person in the shop and the head of the shop would just leave me my list of things to do because he trusted me with everything. He knew that I knew how to use all the tools and knew how to properly clean up after myself and that I was accountable. So I have had a lot of privileged experience as a performer, as a theater person. I had so much instilled in me in high school and college that I think make me a professional in the way that I don't see for others. In the way that for others, I'm like, this is a hobby for you. And I hear that all the time. And I'm like, don't put that evil on me. This is not a hobby for me. I'm not actively being paid, but I have been. Not just from that Comb and a Prayer book. I've been paid other times. And if you're not getting paid, that doesn't make you an artist. Any process I step into, I'm a professional. The next What Theater Means to Me video, I'm going to talk about all my experience in community theater. And obviously, when I did Sister Act a couple of months ago, I accepted that role with 3 weeks. Because I knew, yeah, I've never heard this music. I've never heard a line of this show. But I know my process. And I feel so much pride in that now. And I think what I want to do over the next year is figure out what my process is, write it down, and then teach it. And not even teach it as like the method. I feel like just some people need some level of guidance. Hey, if you're picking for a monologue for an audition, these are the things to look at. If you're creating a character and you want to make it interesting and dynamic, these are the things to look at. What part of your body does that character lead with? Where does your voice sit in your body? Are you a head voice talker or are you a diaphragm talker? What, my teacher, some of the students thought this shit was corny, but my teacher would do these exercises where she'd be like, choose an animal. Walk around the space as that animal. Stuff like that can help you figure out a character. Build a character. It might not matter once you're on stage, but I'll tell you what, it's going to look like you are a professional who knows their shit. And that is a vibe I always bring to theater, and it's because it means so much to me. I used to kind of agonize over the idea that while others had fun at rehearsal, I like worked to be better. And like when we were on break, people go joke around and stuff, and I'm still locked in. But it's not something I'm ashamed of anymore. I kind of see it as the thing that makes me a professional. And whenever I'm back in a setting that requires that professionalism, I'm not going to have to act like a professional. I just am a professional. So that was my time in college as far as theater goes. My favorite role? Probably Stelios. Stelios, Bird Boot, and Caliban are like the three. The Vagrant and Schaefer from The Profession also, but I look at that almost as like, damn, I wish I could do that again, because I might have left a lot of meat on that bone. But yeah, that's the end of the episode today, y'all. The next version of What Theater Means to Me is going to be me talking about my life in community theater. I also am going to do another Monologue Monday next week, so keep your eyes on the channel for that, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Please like the video if you're still here. Comment down below. And the Patreon link is in the comments or in my description if you want to contribute. It would all be appreciated. Thank you so much, guys. The Goose is out.